The wedding was meant to mark the beginning of a beautiful future. It was lavish, full of joy, with hundreds of guests, heartfelt vows, and flawless details. But a single gift from the bride's father would turn their perfect day into tragedy. Camila and Malik were born just months apart in the same upscale neighborhood of Johannesburg, South Africa. Their families were deeply rooted in success, connected through business and culture. From an early age, Camila and Malik were inseparable. Their mothers, both successful entrepreneurs, often organized playdates knowing how much joy the two children brought each other. Their fathers, men of tradition and dignity, used to joke that the kids were destined to be together, long before they even understood what that meant. As children, they spent hours running through their family's sprawling gardens, laughter echoing in the air. When they weren't outside, they sat side by side reading books, dreaming up imaginary worlds, or playing video games. Games Malik usually won, much to Camila's frustration. Even at that age, Camila's competitive nature shone through. She always demanded a rematch. As the years passed, their connection only deepened. They naturally gravitated toward one another, even in social settings crowded with other kids. Their bond was effortless, a quiet understanding that didn't require constant affirmation. They trusted each other completely, their lives woven together as if by fate. In primary school, their closeness became even more apparent. Teachers often remarked on how well they complemented one another. Malik was logical, steady, and thoughtful. Camila was bold, creative, and unafraid to take risks. When Camila got restless in class, doodling instead of paying attention, Malik would nudge her with a whispered reminder. When Malik was hesitant to speak up, unsure of his ideas, Camila would lean in with quiet encouragement, urging him to be more confident. By the time they were 10, their friendship was a constant, something neither of them could imagine life without. They had their disagreements, of course. Malik's practicality clashed with Camila's spontaneity, but their arguments never lasted. They understood each other too well to let conflict come between them. Then came adolescence, and everything began to shift. It wasn't sudden, more like a slow evolution. Subtle changes crept into their friendship. Malik started to notice how Camila's laughter could light up a room. He realized the way she scrunched her nose when annoyed was oddly endearing. Camila, in turn, noticed how Malik had grown taller. His face had matured. His quiet confidence had become magnetic. Others noticed too. Classmates teased them about being a couple. At first, they laughed it off. But over time, the idea didn't seem so ridiculous. By 16, their relationship had transformed. Their friendship remained, but something deeper pulsed beneath the surface. Malik's heart would race when Camila leaned too close. Camila found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. One evening after studying, they sat on Camila's rooftop watching the sun set in warm hues of pink and orange. The scent of jasmine floated on the breeze. Camila finally voiced the question that had been building between them. "Do you ever wonder?" "Wonder what?" Malik asked. "What it would be like," she said, motioning between them. "If we were more than this." Malik's heart pounded. Of course he had wondered, but he'd never dared to say it aloud. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I do." She met his eyes, searching. Whatever she saw made her smile, soft, uncertain, full of hope. Then she leaned in and kissed him. Light, brief, but meaningful. It was the start of something new, something unplanned but wholeheartedly embraced. Their teenage years passed in a blur of shared growth. They were still best friends, still each other's biggest supporters, but their love now had depth. They navigated young love with grace, learning not just how to love, but how to grow together. Some doubted them, calling it a phase. But Camila and Malik knew better. They had something real. By the time they graduated high school, they were already planning a life together. Not just careers, but a future built side by side. Getting accepted into universities in the same city felt like fate confirming what they already knew. They were meant to continue this journey together. Malik's professors saw in him a rare blend of innovation and respect for historical structures, something that made him stand out. He wasn't just training to become an architect, he was a visionary, someone who saw buildings not merely as shelters, but as living legacies. By his final year, he had already secured an internship with one of the top architecture firms in the country. Camila's path was equally remarkable. In her second year, she began designing custom fashion pieces and posting them on social media. Her bold, vibrant designs quickly caught the attention of influencers and fashion insiders. By her third year, she had landed an internship with a renowned fashion house, and her creations were being featured in emerging designer showcases. She was ambitious, fearless, and determined to challenge the norms of the industry. Despite their busy lives, Camila and Malik never lost sight of what mattered most: their love for each other. They had grown through every stage of life side by side, and now they supported one another as they reached for their dreams. But even with everything going so well, one question lingered. When would they take the next step? Camila loved Malik deeply, but she was in no rush to get married. She had seen too many promising women put their dreams on hold too early, sacrificing ambition for expectation. She was determined to build her own name, on her own terms, before becoming someone's wife. Malik understood, even if part of him longed for the permanence that marriage symbolized. He waited, patient and devoted, trusting the right moment would come. When Camila mentioned wanting to visit Kenya, enchanted by its landscapes and rich cultural heritage, Malik knew this was the opportunity he'd been waiting for. He had been carrying an engagement ring for weeks, waiting for the perfect time. The trip started like a dream. They stayed at a luxurious eco-lodge on the edge of the savannah, surrounded by roaming wildlife and endless skies. Mornings were spent on safari, afternoons by the infinity pool, evenings under starlit skies. Camila took photos, sketched designs, soaked in the inspiration all around her. Malik simply watched her, knowing he wanted to spend forever with her. On their fourth night, he arranged a private dinner on a secluded terrace. The view was breathtaking. Candles flickered. The distant sounds of the wild filled the air. As Camila animatedly talked about her future designs, Malik's heart pounded. He had rehearsed the words in his head countless times. But in that moment, nothing seemed rehearsed. He reached for her hand. "Camila," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I've loved you since before I even understood what love was. We've grown up together, dreamed together. I know there's no life for me without you in it." Camila's eyes widened as he slid from his chair and knelt in front of her. The ring was stunning, custom-made with a brilliant diamond and engraved patterns symbolizing unity and eternity. "I don't want to rush you," he continued, voice soft. "But if you're ready, I want to be your husband." Tears welled in Camila's eyes. She had imagined this moment, but reality overwhelmed her in the best way. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times, "yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her into his arms. Beneath the starry sky, surrounded by nature, they kissed, sealing a promise that had been building for years. That night, they lay in bed whispering about their future, the wedding, the travels, the family they'd build. It all felt perfect, and neither of them could have imagined how that promise would be tested. When they returned to Johannesburg, the excitement was electric. Friends and family showered them with love. Their parents, who had always believed in their bond, threw a celebration in their honor. Planning the wedding became their new shared project. As passionate and meticulous as they were in their careers, they brought the same energy to every decision. They didn't want just a grand event. They wanted a wedding that reflected their story. After weeks of searching, they found the perfect venue, an exclusive mountaintop estate overlooking the Atlantic Ocean in the Western Cape. It was majestic, timeless, and full of soul. The ceremony would take place in an open-air courtyard draped in white roses. The reception would be held in a glass pavilion that mirrored the hues of the setting sun over the ocean. Camila instantly pictured the entire event. Malik, standing beside her on the terrace, simply squeezed her hand. This was the place. Every detail was curated with care. Camilla's dress was to be designed by one of Africa's most prestigious couturiers, infused with beadwork and patterns honoring her heritage. Malik's vision for the day was simple: love, warmth, celebration. Their guest list grew quickly. Friends, family, fashion insiders, architectural colleagues. It would be the wedding of the year. Magazine features, interviews, whispers of legacy and love surrounded the build-up to the big day. But amid the frenzy, they remained grounded. Late nights on the balcony, cups of tea, quiet conversations about their future always brought them back to what mattered: each other. Malik often joked, "You can have whatever wedding you want. Just promise me you'll be at the end of that aisle." Weeks passed, then months. The venue transformed into something out of a dream. Every detail fell into place. And the night before the wedding, tradition dictated they spend it apart. But they couldn't sleep. At midnight, they called each other, whispering through the phone, laughing at how surreal everything felt. "I just want to see you walk toward me," Camilla confessed. "I've never been more sure about anything," Malik replied. The next morning dawned bright and golden. The beginning of forever had arrived. Camilla, ever the perfectionist, worked closely with planners to ensure that every detail was flawlessly curated. Her dress, crafted by one of Africa's top designers, was a masterpiece, an elegant blend of haute couture and ancestral inspiration, featuring intricate beadwork and cultural patterns. Malik, though less focused on aesthetics, had his own vision. He wanted the wedding to feel like home, a celebration of love, joy, and togetherness. To him, the real beauty of the event would be the presence of the people who shaped their lives. The guest list grew rapidly. Family, friends, industry leaders, influencers, creatives, everyone wanted to witness what many were already calling the wedding of the year. Magazines reached out, bloggers wrote features, interviews were scheduled. Their story, once intimate, was becoming a public celebration of love and legacy. At times, it was overwhelming. Camilla found herself drowning in details: floral arrangements, seating charts, menu tastings. Malik, noticing her tension, often pulled her aside just to remind her to breathe, to focus on what the day truly meant. In those quiet moments, everything realigned. On their balcony late at night, they would sip tea and talk, not about the wedding, but about their future, the home they'd build, the lives they'd shape. Malik often laughed and said, "Plan whatever you want, love. I just want to marry you." As the big day drew near, the mountaintop estate transformed into a fairy tale setting. Towering floral installations, candlelit walkways, and handcrafted details adorned every corner. The final fittings were done. The rehearsal went smoothly. The anticipation was electric. The night before the wedding, tradition kept them apart, but neither could sleep. At midnight, they called each other, voices hushed with wonder. Camilla whispered, "I still can't believe it's really happening." Malik replied, "It always was. From the start, it was always going to be you." The morning of the wedding arrived with golden light streaming across the mountains. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of the sea. Guests began to gather, laughter and chatter echoing across the courtyard. In one room, Camilla slipped into her gown, a shimmering tribute to her heritage and her dreams. Her mother adjusted the veil, tears silently falling as she looked at the woman her daughter had become. In another room, Malik stood before a mirror in an ivory suit. His best man patted him on the back and asked, "You ready?" Malik met his own eyes in the reflection and smiled. "More than ever." Guests took their seats beneath a canopy of white roses. Music swelled. Then the doors opened, and Camilla stepped forward. She saw no one else but Malik standing at the altar. The noise, the guests, the grandeur, they disappeared. In that moment, it was just the two of them. Two souls who had grown up together, now preparing to say forever. Her father walked beside her, silent and solemn, his hand firm on hers. When they reached the altar, he looked at Malik with an unreadable expression before offering a small, heartfelt nod. The ceremony began, but Camila and Malik barely heard the words. Their hands found each other instinctively. Their eyes never wavered. When it was time for vows, Camila spoke first. Her voice trembled only slightly. She spoke of how Malik had been her foundation, her partner through every high and every low. She promised him loyalty, strength, and endless love. Malik followed, his voice thick with emotion. He spoke of how she had been his compass, his home, that her love had given his life meaning and direction, that she was everything he had ever needed. They exchanged rings, simple, beautiful, and eternal. And when the officiant finally said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the applause was thunderous. Malik pulled her into a kiss, the world melting around them. The reception that followed was breathtaking. The glass pavilion sparkled with candlelight. Guests dined beneath towering floral displays, danced beneath glowing chandeliers, and laughed through speeches that spanned decades of love and friendship. Camila and Malik moved through the evening in a haze of joy. They danced, toasted, and held each other close whenever they found a moment alone. Malik whispered into her ear, "You're everything I ever hoped for." Camila smiled, her fingers tracing his cheek. "And you're mine." As the evening reached its peak, Camilla's father stood before the crowd. He gestured to the terrace, a proud smile on his face. The doors opened, revealing a sleek black and gold helicopter waiting on the estate's private helipad. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The helicopter was a surprise gift, a once-in-a-lifetime aerial tour of the coastline just for the newlyweds, a symbolic way to begin their life together from above, with the world at their feet. Camila turned to Malik, stunned. He laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. Her father clapped Malik on the back. "Take care of her," he said, his tone full of love but heavy with emotion. With cheers behind them and cameras flashing, Camila and Malik stepped toward the helicopter, ready for the first flight of their forever. Malik's vows were just as heartfelt, just as unguarded. He told her she had always been the dream he never knew he had, that he had loved her since they were kids, not just as a partner, but as a person. Her mind, her heart, her spirit had captivated him from the very beginning. She was his home, he said, no matter where they went or what they built together. The officiant asked for the rings. They slid them onto each other's fingers, simple, perfect bands that shimmered in the fading sunlight. It was a moment suspended in time, a pause before the words that would change everything. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." The crowd erupted in applause as Malik pulled Camila into his arms and kissed her. It was fierce, emotional, unforgettable. The world around them blurred, leaving only the feeling of their hands, their hearts, their love. The reception that followed was a vision. Golden candlelight bathed the glass pavilion. Towering floral centerpieces, gourmet dishes, live music. Every detail exuded elegance and celebration. Camila and Malik danced as if the world had disappeared. They twirled beneath chandeliers, smiled through tears, and stole kisses in the soft shadows between songs. Malik whispered that she looked unreal. Camila told him he still made her nervous. Friends and family spoke with reverence. Parents shared stories of young love blooming into forever. Childhood friends recalled secrets, jokes, and the inevitability of what had become. Then came the surprise. Camila's father stood, pride beaming across his face. He gestured toward the terrace. Doors swung open. A sleek black and gold helicopter stood on the estate's private helipad, its blades still. Gasps filled the room. It was his wedding gift, a private aerial tour of the coast just for the two of them, a memory to begin their new life with, an adventure to match the grandness of their love. Camila turned to Malik, wide-eyed. He laughed in disbelief. Her father clapped Malik on the shoulder with a solemn nod. "Take care of her." Guests erupted in applause as the newlyweds stepped out onto the terrace. The cameras flashed, capturing their final moment before the journey. The pilot, uniform crisp, waited by the open cabin door. Camila squeezed Malik's hand. "I can't believe this." "I can. he said, smiling. "It's you and me. This is how our story's supposed to begin." They climbed aboard. The cabin was luxurious, quiet, glowing softly in the cabin lights. The pilot performed his checks. The engine hummed to life. Blades turned, kicking up a wind that lifted Camilla's veil. She turned for one last look at the reception, the guests waving, faces bright with joy. The helicopter lifted into the night. Below them, the estate faded. Ahead, the coastline stretched into the distance, waves glowing in the moonlight. The lights of Cape Town glittered like fallen stars. It was magic. Camilla rested her head on Malik's shoulder. "This is perfect." He kissed her forehead. "So are you." They didn't speak for a while, lost in the view in the moment. Then, without warning, everything shifted. A sharp gust rocked the helicopter, jolting it violently. Camilla gasped, gripping Malik's arm. The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. "Unexpected crosswind. Hold on." Malik tightened his grip on her hand. "It's okay," he said. But his voice betrayed the fear beginning to rise. Another jolt, harder this time. Instruments blinked red. Alarms rang out. Camilla's heart pounded. The cabin tilted. The pilot again. "We're losing stability." Then chaos. The aircraft lurched. The sky spun. Alarms screamed. Lights flashed. Camilla clung to Malik as the world tilted around them. The coastline that had moments ago taken their breath away was now a blur of spiraling darkness. The impact came without warning. A crushing roar as metal collided with stone. The windshield shattered, steel twisted, flames erupted, the tail snapped, the rotors split apart. Malik did the only thing he could. He shielded her with his body. The helicopter came to rest in pieces, half wedged on the rocky cliffside, half dangling over the edge. Black smoke poured into the sky. Camilla stirred first. Her body ached, her head throbbed, blood ran down her temple. The wreckage around her groaned. She blinked through the haze, panic rising. Malik. She tried to move. Everything hurt. Her hand reached, searching. Smoke choked her lungs. Finally, her fingers brushed his. He was slumped against what remained of his seat. His white suit was ripped and stained with blood and ash, but he was breathing, shallow, faint. "Malik," she croaked, crawling to him. "Wake up." He groaned softly. "Camilla!" A burst of flame snapped behind them. The heat surged. Sparks rained from exposed wires. The wreckage creaked, shifting dangerously. She had to move him. Summoning strength from somewhere deep inside, she wrapped her arms beneath his and dragged him toward the broken opening in the cabin. Her ribs screamed, her lungs burned, but she kept going. They tumbled out just as a second explosion rocked the wreckage. Camilla fell, rolling down the rocky incline. She gasped for air, then scrambled to her knees. "Malik!" She spotted him just a few feet away, motionless. Ignoring her pain, she crawled to him, pressed her hands to his chest. Faint pulse, shallow breath. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please, stay with me." Behind them, the wreck groaned one final time. Then, with a sickening screech, it slipped from the cliff. The helicopter plummeted into the sea. A fireball lit the night. Camilla didn't look. She stayed by Malik's side, clutching his shirt, her eyes locked on his. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Help was coming. But as she held him, trembling and bloody, she didn't know if it would be in time. The helicopter cabin was designed for comfort, softly lit and perfectly quiet. Camilla reached for Malik's hand as the pilot ran through the pre-flight check. He squeezed her fingers gently, offering a reassuring smile. The engines roared to life. The rotor blades began spinning, lifting her veil with a gust of wind. Camilla turned back for one last look at the glowing reception below. The guests still cheering, their faces full of excitement and love. Then, with graceful ease, the aircraft lifted into the night sky. The estate below grew smaller. The Atlantic coastline stretched endlessly, and the stars reflected on the dark ocean like scattered diamonds. Inside, everything felt surreal. Camila rested her head on Malik's shoulder. "This is incredible," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "So are you." They sat in silence, simply taking in the view, the lights of Cape Town twinkling in the distance, the moon casting silver reflections over the waves. The moment felt eternal, until it didn't. A sudden gust of wind slammed into the helicopter, sending it veering hard to one side. Camila gasped, gripping Malik's arm. The cabin tilted. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, tense but steady. "Unexpected crosswind. Hold tight." Malik's hand tightened on hers. "It's okay," he said, though his voice wasn't as steady. Another jolt rocked them, harder this time. Lights on the control panel flashed red. Alarms blared. The helicopter shuddered. "We're losing stability," the pilot called out. "Brace yourselves." Then came the chaos. The cabin lurched violently. The sea spun outside the windows. Camila held on to Malik as tightly as she could, heart racing, eyes wide. She couldn't scream. She couldn't move. There was only the noise, the shrill whine of alarms, the roar of wind, the panic inside her chest, and Malik's arms wrapped tightly around her. And then, impact. The sound of metal against rock was deafening. The windshield shattered. Blades snapped. The fuselage broke apart with a sickening crunch. Flames exploded from the ruptured fuel lines. The world became a blur of fire and force and shrapnel. When everything finally stilled, there was only smoke and silence. Camila stirred, groaning in pain. Her body was bruised and bloodied. Her head throbbed. Her ears rang. It took several seconds to remember where she was, what had just happened. Then she remembered Malik. "Malik?" she croaked, trying to move. Her arms burned. Her ribs screamed. The smell of fuel and smoke filled her lungs. She turned her head slowly, painfully, until she saw him, slumped nearby, blood on his face, unmoving. She crawled toward him, dragging herself over debris. Her hand found his chest. It rose. Barely. He was alive, but just barely. "Malik, wake up!" she begged, shaking him. "We have to get out of here." A groan escaped his lips. His eyelids fluttered. "Camila, I'm here," she whispered, "but we have to move." The wreck groaned again. The metal beneath them shifted. They were dangerously close to the edge of the cliff. Flames crackled behind them, creeping forward. With everything she had, Camila dragged Malik toward a jagged opening in the broken cabin. Her muscles screamed. Her breath came in short, painful bursts, but she didn't stop. They tumbled out just as another explosion rocked the wreck. The blast flung them across the rocks. Camila hit hard, gasping. When she looked up, Malik lay a few feet away, motionless once again. "No," she whispered, scrambling to him. She checked his pulse, faint, his breathing, shallow. "Stay with me," she pleaded, gripping his shirt. Behind them, the remains of the helicopter teetered, then gave way. The twisted metal plunged over the cliff, crashing into the rocks below in a final burst of fire. The night fell silent. Camila held Malik, sobbing. Somewhere in the distance, she heard sirens, distant, approaching. She didn't know if help would come in time. All she knew was that he was still breathing, and that had to be enough. Her hands trembled as she cupped his face, forcing herself to stay calm. "Stay with me, Malik," she begged, her voice breaking. "Please, just stay with me." Above them, the wreckage groaned, then gave one final warning. With a horrific screech, what remained of the helicopter slipped over the cliff's edge, tumbling into the black abyss below. A final explosion lit up the night sky. The ocean answered with crashing waves, echoing the violence above. Then, silence. Camila barely registered the sound. Her whole world was narrowed to Malik, his pale face, his broken body, the way his chest barely rose beneath her hands. Somewhere in the distance, sirens cut through the quiet. Help was coming, but the wreckage had already claimed too much. The wind howled around them. Smoke coiled into the stars. The heat from the wreck licked at her back as she held him tighter, refusing to let go. Malik's breath came in short, uneven gasps. Blood streamed from his temple. His wedding suit, once immaculate, was now torn and soaked in ash. His lips moved. Camilla, he whispered, voice fragile. I love you. She sobbed. Don't say goodbye. You're going to be okay. Just hold on. The ground beneath them shifted. The cliff creaked, groaned. Metal scraped rock as the remains of the helicopter teetered further down. We have to move, she whispered. Gritting her teeth, she tried to lift him again. Her ribs felt like fire. Her limbs shook. She pulled him inch by inch away from the edge. His head fell against her shoulder. He was slipping. Don't you dare leave me, she cried. Please. He exhaled, barely conscious. It's okay. No, it's not, she snapped. You're staying with me. The wreckage gave way. There was a sickening sound of cracking stone as the cliff beneath them began to collapse. In an instant, they were falling, weightless, spinning, tangled in each other as they tumbled into the void. The sky above shrank. The cliff vanished. Darkness swallowed them whole. The final impact was brutal. Stone, wind, silence. The ocean below surged against the rocks like it was mourning, crashing with relentless rhythm. Smoke still rose from the wreckage above, a glowing scar against the mountain's face. Searchlights pierced the darkness. Rescue crews moved quickly across the wreck site, but their pace slowed as they neared the edge. Below, among shattered debris, the truth was undeniable. There would be no survivors. Camilla's body lay still, her gown torn and stained. Her curls were matted with soot. Her fingers, still curled, seemed to reach for something just out of grasp. Not far from her, Malik's body was sprawled across jagged terrain, one arm extended as if he'd tried to shield her even in death. His white suit was ripped, smeared with blood and ash. Their love had endured everything except this. Above, the wedding estate had fallen silent. Where music once played, where laughter once rang, there was now only mourning. Camila's father stood frozen. Her mother's cries echoed through the night. Malik's parents clung to each other, devastated beyond words. Guests wept openly. The celebration had turned into a tragedy too cruel to comprehend. And as the wind swept through the cliffs, a single strip of fabric danced through the air, Camilla's veil. Torn free, it floated gently down until it came to rest among the wildflowers clinging to the rocks. A delicate, silent memorial to a love that burned brightly, but wasn't meant to last.